I'm terrible at asking for help in general. But when it comes to mental, emotional help, I have no shame in that. It's more of the physical. It's asking help with physical things. Like if somebody is in a store, it happened the other day. I was leaving Home Goods. My cart was like overflowing. The two women were like, why don't you make 2 trips? I can get somebody to help. And I go, I got this. I piled all the shit in and I was like this, rug here, lamp here, like all this stuff. That's just me. I don't know. I'm not having somebody help me to the car. Are you crazy?
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
Typically what we'll do is we'll introduce the guest and everything like that, and then we just get right into the episode. This time we're just going to get right into the episode because we're super excited that you're here, Nicki. Like legitimately super freaking excited to talk to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
When we started the podcast, we did this thing where we each go around and we try to pick and choose people that we want to have come on the show, right? And it's a wide range of people because truthfully, we talk about so many different things. Obviously, the core of the podcast is about relationships and about trying to heal from our past and our traumas and all sorts of different things like that. And it expands outward from just primary relationship, right? So that's a lot of what we're focused on, obviously, because it's our relationship that we're sharing a lot of things from. But truthfully, it's about relationships in general with everybody. And we believe that we're all in relationship with each other. And that's kind of one of the benefits that social media has done, is it's given us this connection with more people, which means we're kind of in relationship with more people, which means we kind of have more stuff to look at and more things that will trigger us and spark us and all sorts of different stuff. And so when we're looking for guests for the podcast, both of us are going about, there's a handful of people that we already know, like we've got our top 10 list of people that we hopefully get to talk to one day. And then it's not to say you're not on that list. I realized as I presented that was terrible.
No, not at all. Listen, please. You not at all.
But it's like Liz Gilbert. Like Liz Gilbert's both at the really top of our list, right? One day we hope to have Liz on the podcast. It's people like Alanis Morissette, all of these like dream guests that hopefully one day will come and sit down on the podcast with us. And then we're also scanning and reaching out and trying to just throw this super wide net for people. And you're somebody that we not just follow from like our social accounts for the podcast and everything like that, but we both follow you like independently in our own little private world as well. And so when we brought up, like I told Steph the other day when I reached out to you, and she was like, what? Her? Are you crazy? That's so amazing. Like she was so excited and so jazzed because we're really, really big fans of yours outside of like content creation and social media. Like just as consumers of content, we love your stuff. So we're super excited to have you here.
It means a lot to me because I think what I throw out there is like very surface level for the most part. It really is. Like I don't go at all deep into who I am, but I am such a deep thinker. So I think this will bring another side of me out, which I appreciate too, the opportunity.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you get all the time. That's the beautiful thing about podcasting is you get so much more time to elaborate on thoughts and express yourself. And so we really get to go into it. And I know we mentioned in our emails back and forth and whatnot about kind of unpacking and going into imposter syndrome. And how hard that is for you to navigate and kind of what that has looked like as far as the growth that you've had, all the different stuff that has brought for you. I'm sure it's something that you're continually kind of butting up against all the time. But before we start unpacking that, let's talk a little bit about who you are, kind of why you are, not why you are the way that you are, but how you got to where you're at in life today. Because the whole idea of being like somebody that creates content for social media and suddenly becomes like a social media influencer and kind of does all of these things that exists in the world today, it's a wonky path, Nicki. Like it's not the normal trajectory of life, even though we all see it and consume it and look at it. But what does that look like for you over the last however many years?
Yeah, so I love it. I'll go back to like the beginning because I was recently having this epiphany of like, wait, which way did I think when I was a kid? Was I always like this? And I'll go back to sitting in the dugout when I was about 10 years old. I was on the 1988. So I was 10 or 11, 1988 New England Championship All-Star team for softball. And I made the team as one of the younger, if not the youngest on that All-Star team. And I remember that's like when I was trying to figure out what the heck is imposter syndrome. Cause like this word's being used a lot, the term's being used, but like, what exactly does it mean? And that's what it means is I was sitting there on that bench going, how the hell did I make this team? These girls are so good. The coaches are like on us. Like I just felt I didn't know how I belonged. But, and this is why I say, but I like to dummy things down for people because we can go into all these psychological reasons of like why I ended up showing up. I really think my wiring was like to be successful. I think I have success driven grit like within me. So if people want to talk about how were you parented? How did you get that? I was freaking born with that. And I don't know how to parent that. I have 2 kids. If I could give them the secret sauce, I would. But imposter syndrome for someone like me was sitting there at 10, 11 years old going, I don't know how I made the team, but I sure as hell am not going to sit here and wonder the whole season. I'm going to figure it out. And the next year, I'm going to be out there as a starter. So I'm very much an observant person. I'm very much I learn by watching. And that's what I recently thought of. I'm like, I've always been like this. I've always had to learn by watching. I've always had to observe. And I think it goes hand in hand. Jump to today, I've had to watch a lot of content. I've had to learn from a lot of different parenting experts and parenting advice. And I take it all in and then I decide what I'm going to do with it. So I don't know if that's helpful in, what you asked me is a big full circle of like who I was as a kid to who I am now and how I'm showing up online. And it's kind of wild.
It's so wild. We think about so much of what we're constantly like, not just thinking about, talking about, having conversations about, but really unpacking in our own personal lives is this link and connection between childhood and today. And oftentimes we're looking at it through the lens of trauma and trying to unpack the baggage and trying to see the correlating, connecting pieces. But there's this other side of it too, where it gets to be fun. It gets to be like parts of, like, for example, right now I'm experiencing, I'm 43 years old. We've had massive life changes in the last few years. Our youngest son just graduated from high school. Like we're continually in the last, literally probably the last 4 or 5 years, we're just confronting over and over and over again these big, massive life shifts. And it's coming in conjunction with like midlife stuff and midlife crises and all sorts of chaos. But I'm also like in the calm, in the storm, sometimes I'm going back and I'm remembering what it was like to be 16 years old or what it was like to be 12 or 13. And I'm having those memories come up both I'm learning from those moments, right? I'm looking at those moments and seeing like, oh, I remember feeling this way when I was 13 years old, or I can see now how some of that behavior is connected to the way that I processed stuff as a teenager. But like I said, it's also just fucking fun stuff. It's like we binge out all the time on music. Like the list of music, my playlist right now that I'm listening to is 100% the same playlist that I listened to when I was like 16 years old, cruising around. And I can see like I'm having this experience of feeling similar things that I used to feel then, having similar thoughts. It's like this opportunity to really readdress where I was at in life as a teenager versus where I'm at in life today. And what do I want to keep from that time period? What do I want to set down? I know that doesn't totally relate to what you were just talking about, but that's what it made me think about was, dropping back into those moments, right? It's just crazy bananas how oftentimes they're reflected so beautifully for us.
Well, I think in parenthood, you lose a lot of it, not intentionally and not in a negative way. You're just so consumed with parenting and paying the bills and getting the right calendar things in the calendar on time, that we lose a sense of like who we are. I can't remember the exact name of the movie, but it was Bruce Willis and what was the relationship movie? Bruce Willis and do you remember the one?
I'm a huge movie guy, so give me just a little bit more.
Michelle Pfeiffer in it? Yes, I know that show.
Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm almost there with you.
I'll Google while you keep talking.
Are you going to look? Okay, you keep going.
There was this scene between them that stands out to me because I was like, I don't think I watched it when I was young. I loved the movie. because I've always been drawn to relationship dynamics. It's like what I
This
went to
is
school for. But I remember their fight. There was this big fight, and she started crying and said, "I'm still fun." And it was like boop, and she was trying to remember that person she was when she first like dated him. And I resonate with that so much because my kids have become my whole life. And I just yesterday, Craig, it's funny we're talking about this. I just yesterday posted something that was in trends with the I'm just a girl. And so what's trended on TikTok is these older kids who are now having this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, do you ever just think like your mom is just a girl? She's a girl. And I made a video and it touched a lot of hearts. You'll have to see it on Instagram. And I talked about how I have a lot of the same needs as my kids do, but I'm a mom. So I'm not supposed to show those things all the time, or am I? And I had a conversation with my 7-year-old son. And I said, "Did you know mom is just a girl? I'm like a girl. And I was once your age." And we had this long, long talk and I shortened it. But then at the end, I put the No Doubt song, "I'm Just a Girl." And I put it over this compilation of me just acting like my unapologetic self, dancing, being goofy, playing with my kids. But I had to be very present in taking out the clips of me being a mother. Because most of the first clips that I had running with the song going over them was like me in motherhood moments. I'm like, wait a minute. No, I'm trying to get back to like who I was at the very beginning. And you really are. You're a kid in a freaking grown up body and a grown up emotions and thoughts. And we're just presenting them differently than our kids are because we have the tools to like what society expects of us. But we're all just little kids inside.
It's what we're after. Like, I mean, it's first off, the movies This Is Us came out in 1999 with Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer. I want to go back and watch it now.
it's so good.
I can't believe I just said that. He just passed yesterday. Didn't he?
Did he just pass away yesterday?
Yes.
Oh my
Oh, I
goodness.
didn't know that.
And I hope I'm not spreading. I think I saw it come across my feed. Very sad. But that scene that they did was like you stopped breathing while you were watching it, because even if you weren't married, I was young when I watched it, I still felt that pain in their voices. Like they wanted the marriage to work, they wanted to be together, but something was like missing from who they both were supposed to be. And they kind of looked back to who they both used to be before kids and all the pressures. I think that's what we're all after.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, in our relationship, that's what it's looked like, where we went through the whole process of falling in love, getting together, and then playing all of these roles, right? We're playing like the two people in love. And this is our second marriages for both of us. So we had, our previous lives, we brought kids together. We did all of these things. And at some point, there's a lot of like masking that has taken place where we're presenting a certain thing, presenting a certain way, playing those roles in a certain way. And all of it, we've just had to like let go of and really look at over the years, because like when it comes to like the idea and the topic of imposter syndrome, I mean, how much of an imposter have you felt as a parent? I mean, our kids are older, like our youngest, like we said, he just turned 18. We've got our oldest daughter's 25. So it's like we've done the parenting thing for a good 20 years now, but we still don't know what the fuck we're doing. We have zero clue as to how to help them at this phase of life. It feels just as crazy as it did when they were little and we were trying to figure out whether or not their fever was high enough that we need to take them to the doctor. Like all of those things, I don't think it ever goes away. We just figure out more of like how to be ourselves. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
What you do, you talk to, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I am judgmental at times when I'm like, who are you? Like, and I don't say it. It's just, let's admit, sometimes we're listening to someone else talk about something, or we see another kid doing something, and we're like, oh God, I don't believe in screen time like that. Or I don't believe in my kid having a phone at that age. Right. So I'm judging, but I'm also like, what do I really believe? I don't always know. It's stuff that's fed to me, what's fed to me. And that's like a tough balance to really sit back and go, well, how important is this and why? And luckily, I'm a constant grower. So I work with somebody on the regular to have these conversations with, because I'm like, what are my values? It doesn't need to be what everyone else's values down the street is. My house can be run different based on who I am. And that's okay.
What does that look like
Yes.
for you, Nicki? I think that's so huge to be able to, like, even that statement alone, right? My house can run differently
Yeah.
than the house across the street, or more importantly, probably than the house that I grew up in.
Yes. Yes.
Like, what does that look like for you?
So for me, I am very comfortable with things like open communication, vulnerability, knowing when I'm wrong and admitting it, being imperfect, being silly with my kids, doing all the fun stuff. That's natural for me. And that is not natural for some people. Some people struggle with that. So you have to remember, you've got a talent in parenthood that not everybody has. We're all different types of parents, but I'll give you a concrete example. There was a day that my friend, who's super strict, her parents were super strict. Our kids were all out at my pool swimming when the kids were a lot smaller. And my daughter did something or said something that I knew my friend would be like, oh, if it was one of her kids, right? It wasn't, I reacted based on the way I thought my friend would respect me reacting. Does that make sense? So
Makes
I've
total
been there.
sense.
instead of me
And we
being,
have those moments all the time.
yeah, so my normal self is like, Layla, get over it, or to make her laugh and just like we move on. But I felt like I needed to be like a disciplinarian in that moment. So I was like, that's it. Get out of the pool. Come with me. We're going to talk. And I remember the next day I had a coaching call and I said, Matt, I had this moment, and I don't want to do this to my kids. I had this moment where I all of a sudden was acting different because another parent was here and I didn't want to be judged. So he said, get a Post-it note out, get something out that you could just write on. He goes, I want you to come up with the 3 words that represent your house, your home, your family. 3 words. And if something does not fit within those 3 words as a characteristic, you don't do it. So it was open-minded. It was playful. It was like these fun-loving words where like we get through shit differently. We don't have to crack the whip and show an extreme reaction to something that probably isn't that big of a deal. So he had me put Post-it notes of those 3 words up on every doorway that I entered. So if I entered the bathroom here and I came out of the bathroom there, the Post-it note was there and there. And it was just a reminder, like, my house runs the way my values run. These things are important to me. They may not be the same as someone else's home. And it helped to really shift me as a parent. And that was like during COVID. So that was the beginning of COVID where I was like, I'm in the thick of it. I need to really have my values in line or else I'm going to be all over the map with this. And it's helped tremendously. And I feel like I stayed on this whole course for 4 years where like, that is my parenting style.
I love that. That is a really beautiful practice.
You got to be flexible and nimble with all of it. But if it's really a big deal, we face it. If it's something that's really not that big of a deal, you got to squash some of the things, right? Or else you'll go insane. But I think every house should do that exercise.
I love it. I love it. We've done like as you grow, the way you parent your first kid. I mean, every kid's different, so you parent them in different styles in a sense according to them. But we try to do it all the same for a while. At least I know I did. But
everything had to be equal. Everything had to be even, right? There is so much of like the story of our childhoods where it was like everybody had, the exact same, like it was always equal. And if it wasn't equal, then by God, something was wrong and the parents had to fix it.
So as we grew as parents, the parents that our youngest child got is not the same parents that our first child got. And in between, he's got the most laid back and ready to like really celebrate individuality and self-expression. And I caught myself in what you're saying the other day or a few weeks ago. Time is really blurry right now, but he's really good about expressing himself very vocally, very, he's just like, if he's got a word, he's gonna say it. He's just gonna say what he's thinking. He's gonna say what he's feeling. He's gonna say it how. He's gonna share his opinions. It's very And we're good with that in the house. Sometimes we kind of rattle our brain a little bit like, oh, that was a lot, but we're good with it in the house. And I don't remember where we were. We were in a conservative area and we were outside and he voiced that in a store. And I saw somebody look. And for a second, I was like, watch your mouth, dude. I told him to watch his mouth.
Because they don't know the whole story. They don't know who you are as a parent. And this is me on social media. I'm showing you 30 seconds of my whole life, and that's going to come with judgment. So you got to know who you are. Like the same
Right.
way, if you want a social presence, you got to have the same freaking Post-it note rules for yourself, because somebody comes at me about parenting, I am not going to react to that because I know exactly who I am as a parent. I've done the freaking work.
I love that.
I've done the work. So don't come at me for me as a parent. You could come at me for maybe, my marriage before divorce. Like, come at me for that. And then maybe I'll go, oh, maybe I should have done a few things different, but totally different. And that's why I don't talk about relationships. I'm not ready to talk about that. I don't know who I am in that arena. But
Right. Yeah. I did have the opportunity to apologize to him after. I didn't catch it in the moment. I didn't catch it in the store, but later on it was like full accountability. I'm so sorry. I said that. I'm so sorry. I told you I had no right to say that to you. You get to choose what you say and when you say it and who you say it to. And he was like, okay. And off we went. But it was just that moment of,
that he knows that you're showing that you're human too. And the same thing about the pool story. The normal me would have never, because I think of it as if you have to call your kid out in front of other people, it's a little bit of shaming, a little bit. So I would have just said later, hey, remember that moment in the pool where like I looked pissed off? I just like, let's talk about that because that was not appropriate. Just talk, and you just move on. My dad was really good about that. I respect the shit out of my dad. I've never fought with him ever because he comes from the more passive side of the family. My mom's side is like in your face, like you're never going to have to wonder how they feel. So imagine that balance as a kid. When I'm with dad, I adjust to dad in that family. When I'm with mom, I adjust to mom in this family. As a divorced kid, I just learned how to be nimble with like what the needs were. But my dad always said something short, to the point, nothing else. And I knew that he meant it. You know what I mean?
Totally. We just saw this. I want to get your take on this because we just watched one of this. Do you know who the Gottmans are? The Gottman Institute. Have you ever heard of them before?
Yes.
And like, there's no judgment about what I'm about to say, right? Sometimes we give all of these caveats where it's like, we don't mean this, we don't mean this, we don't mean this, but here's all those things that we mean.
Just chatting about stuff we see in that.
Exactly.
That's
interesting point of view.
Because we're talking about parenting and because we're talking about it through this lens right now, the real, I won't go into the real about what the clip was about, but the idea was presenting a united front as parents and how important it is to present that kind of like we're on the same page as parents, and regardless of like who the kid is coming to, right?
Yep.
And we've talked about this a lot too. And like Steph just mentioned, like each one of our kids have gotten different versions of us as parents. And every single one of them, even they still do it today, even though like our daughters are old and they live on their own and everything like that, right? They'll come to the parent depending upon what it is that they're seeking or what they're needing or what they're wanting. And when our kids were littler and we were really in the thick of like raising and doing parenting stuff, we very much felt like we were doing the best that we could to be on the same team. We were always having conversations about, what's going on with them and hoping that basically presenting that united front. And that's basically what the Gottmans were talking about as well in the clip and whatnot. And the more that we got to thinking about it, like, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, because there's such a benefit to kids learning how to navigate different relationships with different people. And their two primary relationships are always going to be with their parents, even if those relationships don't exist, right? You're always going to be in relationship with your parents, even if those relationships aren't real in a sense, right? You're always going to have some sort of navigation that's going on emotionally. And I love the idea of presenting not a united front, but more of I have to learn how to navigate my conversations with mom, and I have to learn how to navigate my conversations with dad. And sometimes dad lets me do these things, and sometimes mom lets, all of those things that happen regardless, right? That's how our life was. We just fooled ourselves into thinking that, oh, we're on the same page, we're doing this thing. And we are to some extent, right? There's always nuance, and we, typically met eye to eye on most things. But what do you think of that? Doesn't it make more sense to kind of have this realistic view? Hey, everybody, we just wanted to take a minute and push pause real quick to thank you for being here and listening to the Steph and Craig Show. We know there's a lot of options out there when it comes to podcasts, and we are incredibly grateful that you chose us. The things that we have heard on podcasts have helped both of us in our healing journey. So we believe that they're incredibly powerful. And we have an important mission with this podcast that we need your help with. Head over to YouTube and search out The Steph and Craig Show. Be sure to click on the subscribe button, and don't forget about the little bell for those notifications so that you don't miss an episode. One other thing you can do is share it with somebody, whether it's this episode you're listening to right now or one of the other episodes that you've really enjoyed. We love you, we care about you, and we're on a mission to help you create better relationships and live your best life, because we believe we all do better when we heal together. Now let's get back to the show.
Me growing up in the 80s just gave me a lot of gifts that I didn't realize it gave me, just based on the generation. And
It's a good way to phrase trauma. I like that.
Right. Well, see, I will tell you, a lot of kids that say they were raised in the 80s and they were like latchkey and stuff like that. I wasn't. So my parents divorced when I was 2. I didn't feel the divorce as if I were 7. You know what I mean? So 2, I really didn't notice a difference. But here's the link for me that a lot of people didn't have is I had both sets of grandparents that were in their 40s. My parents had me at 21. My grandparents were in their, they were my age. And now I'm the parent at what my grandparents' age was. So long story short, they both had the nuclear family homes, one town away from the other. They both drove me everywhere. They were at all my games. So essentially I had the mom and dad who were young, and they both would probably admit they had no idea what they were doing at 21, 22, having me. But my grandparents played the part of like, I had 2 whole ass families with my grandparents. My grandparents like helped to raise me tremendously. So I didn't feel a lot of that stuff that other like 80s kids felt. I came from like really so much love and nurturing. And if anything is a testament of like, you can spoil the shit out of your kids with love, and that doesn't mean they're going to turn out to be spoiled brats. I had so much love and so much positive reinforcement around me at all times that I'm like, see? And I grew up to be truly so like humble and modest and caring, and I don't know. So there's no rhyme or reason to any of these like tattles that people are telling.
There really isn't, right?
Example, and they make it into this big factual research-based thing. And I'm like, none of us really know what we're doing. We're all trying our best, and like, trust. Keep them safe, right?
Doing our best with that. I want to like circle back to one of the things you said that really jumped out of how you handle, in a sense, imposter syndrome or challenging situations of where your self-confidence might take a dip. You might start to question. So you said when you were on that game or on that team, you first thought, how the hell am I here?
Yeah.
And instead, like the shift of where I think there's significant change there is, instead of sitting there wondering, punishing yourself, feeling like you really don't belong, and just like all of that, you didn't wonder about it. You said, I'm going to figure it out, and next year I'm going to be starting.
Yeah.
So that is such a different shift from being like this curious mindset of confidence, in a sense of, I'm not going to wonder, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to move towards it and go towards that, lean into that and start. How old were you? You said freshman, was it? So you're like 15, 14, 15?
I was like 10.
You were 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was always like this. Even my dad is like, nobody in my family is surprised. If I take a corporate job and I climb the ladder, they're not surprised. If I pick out a sport and I excel in it, they're not surprised. And I have no idea how to teach any of this to anyone else. Like my cousin, who has known me since we were born, he told somebody who's like, oh my God, can you believe Nicki on social media? And he's like, Nicki is my cousin. There's nothing that she does that she doesn't go all in. But here's the difference is if I don't like it and want to do it, it is thrown in the trash. So basketball, No one told me. My parents didn't hover over me and helicopter around me, and they didn't put anything in my head. They literally let me do what I innately wanted to do. What I wanted to do, I did if it was safe. They were like, go for it, try it, but you have to finish it. If you sign up for violin in third grade and you hate the violin, you're finishing the term with the violin. It was that simple. So I hated the violin. I did not like basketball. For some reason, softball, I knew I wanted to be on that team. There was no one that told me. It was an environment. I felt it with my gut. I don't think I give enough credit to this day for my intuition. There's a lot of people who sell intuition for a living, and I believe in those people. I have it. I've just never sold it. I've just followed it. I feel everything around me. So for me to want to be on that softball team was probably because the environment and the people made me feel really good to be around. Basketball, probably not the same. I didn't get the same vibe from the place. Maybe it was the auditorium it was in. Maybe it was the parents, the coaches, like this, it didn't give me the same vibe. So anything that I feel really good about, I will go 1,000% in. Anything that I don't, or I'm like, my gut's telling me otherwise, throw it in the trash. Same thing like relationships that I've been in. Not my marriage, but if I dated somebody and I was crazy about them, I was all in. If I felt like something was off, I could just dip out. It's like, but I got to figure a lot of that out because I didn't have all this noise that unfortunately kids have around them today. I really think part of it was my upbringing. I was able to be autonomous, find my independence without a ton of noise. You know, like I was making mud soup in the yard, and it was a lot of fun.
There's a lot there, Nicki, that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
First off, I had a question for you. I don't want to forget the other thing too, so help me remember, babe. Intuition.
I got it.
Okay. Because that's a really big deal. I want to talk to you about intuition. But as we're sitting here unpacking it and talking about it, and I'm really thinking about, like, for me, one of the core things with imposter syndrome, it's fear. It's not just like, because we had it with this podcast. We had our previous podcast, we were like in a beautiful flow with it. We were very much in this like happy place with it. And it felt very comfortable for us. And then shifting up and doing this has felt like the complete opposite. We're so outside of our comfort zone. And for me, when it comes to confronting all of those things, it's just facing fear after fear after fear after fear. Fear that I'm going to mess up, fear that, a lot of it is the externalization of like, what are people going to think? How are they going to respond? How are they going to receive it? How are they going to treat us? But it's even just like the, fear of like, I don't know how to do this thing. And how am I going to do this thing? So my question is, what do you do with fear? Because it's not that you're immune to it by any means, right? What is fear in your life and how do you interact and engage with it?
I'm still facing that. I love that question because if I were fearless, dude, my post would be so much more bold and so much more honest. And I fear every single day that I'm going to be judged the wrong way or misunderstood. It's so hard to feel misunderstood. It really is. So I face that every day, but trying to think in terms of outside of social media, like, all right, if this makes sense, and keep me on course, feel free, because my brain will go into like 1,000 questions. Like one question you could give me and I have 100 like alerts going on. So, but one thing I do is I was scared shitless to dive in to content full time. So what I was doing is I was like, I'm consulting and I'm doing content because that was a safe place to be. It's like, I can't really make an excuse for not growing here. Like I can make excuses because I'm here and here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're doing multiple things and you're doing all of them kind of well. That's a good excuse. So I always had the fallback of, I'm a consultant, and like content, it felt like less boss bitch to say content's just for fun. Where deep down I knew I want to do this full time. Why can't I just say that I want to do this? Why does this feel funny? It feels weird. I'm 46. Like, who's doing this at my age and who needs the like validation of other people. It just felt dirty and weird. And then there was one day I was like, you know what? I'm never going to know it till I try it. And so I'm answering the fear question here. Here's what I did. I said, I am going to put on the calendar where I take 6 months where I say no to consulting offers. I drop my clients when their contract's done. And at that 6-month start, I'm going to give myself 6 months and I'm going to say it out loud to the universe, giving myself 6 months. And if I can go all in with content, then I'll go all in with content. And if I can't, then I go back to consulting, and that's okay. Could always go back. Within the first 3 months of that, I was blowing up on Instagram. Like literally my Instagram account went whoosh, and then I got called by my current manager, who's my brother, who was unwilling to manage me. And then he goes, okay, now I just want to let you know the agency is talking about you and I am going to try to get you a few deals. Let's see if it works with us. And I said, well, what was the difference between then and now? And he goes, because you were so in your head and you couldn't decide what you wanted to do. And now I see you doing it. So that's how I faced the fear, was I needed to give myself still the ability to feel it, but with a timeline. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it was like the timeline was my safety net. I'm just 6 months. You know, I say that to my son with like when I take away screen time, I'm trying to do a dry summer from the iPad.
Oh, good luck.
We're on day 6 or 7. Way hard. But also the benefits outweigh. But it's like, even with my kids, I try to remember they don't understand this big leap, right? Or he doesn't want to go to this game and it's really scary for him to get up to bat in front of people. And it's like, to give them the timeline of like, you know, how many days are left of school? He woke up on a Monday with the Monday scaries, and I had to show him the countdown of this 5 full days left of school, this 4 half days left of school. And I just had to change the topic and get him, that kid's full of fear. So I try to remember I am full of it too, but I found the tools that help me. Thank goodness. Because I've got the overthinker spirit. It's in me. It's in me.
What I'm hearing is creating a boundary for yourself where you have control over that fear. Because I think that's a lot. I can relate to that. A lot of, because fear is the unknown, right? We can just create it all day long. We can sit around and think about all the what ifs and all the shoulds and the coulds. And we had this realization recently too, where it was like, we're so good at, we call it future casting. So we'll sit and we'll future cast.
Love that.
And like, if things are going really good in our life right now, we will future cast dilemmas to sit in present moment. So it's like, here's a possible scenario in the future where we might get stuck between a rock and a hard spot. We call those paradoxes. Like, I'm going to get stuck in a paradox in the future and I won't know what to do. And I'll be future casting all of that from like the comfort of the present moment where it's nice outside. I've got water, like everything's perfectly fine in the present moment, but we'll future cast those all the time. And so it's creating a boundary. This is what I heard, was you creating a boundary where you had control over that fear. And I think that is really, really profound. Can you see how you've done that, like with other things? Can you take that same kind of example that you gave when it came to consulting and content creating? Can you see how that maybe has played a role in other ways?
Totally. I think it goes all the way back to sports, me being an athlete growing up, right? When I went to UConn for field hockey, we were the top team in the nation, collegiate Division I. Like, we were always in the top 4. And what I remember is I succeeded so well there because of the structure, because of the expectations. As far as like, if I could give an example to anybody, it would be, we had these summer packets, and every single day of the summer, you had the calendar that your coach gave you. And every single day you saw exactly what workout you had to do. And you either did it or you didn't. And I did it every day to the T. And I then got to preseason. I passed the running test on the first day. It's all preparation. But for me, it was given on a silver platter back then. So when I don't feel like I have that focus in my real life, I kind of say, okay, if I were the head coach of this crazy, incredible program for people, what would I do? And it would be guidelines and boundaries and goals and a timeline. So I'm saying it as if it's easy for me to do. It's not. That method works. And I often say, I have a coach. Luckily, I'm back to my financial ability where I can afford a really good executive coach. And he helps me with where my mind is. He helps to just bring it back and say, you realize you're making up all these stories, right? So, like, let's break these down and where they come from. And many times it comes from a place that you're like, wow, that was so long ago. How did that come up right now? So that's what you guys are all about. And I say to other people, it's like, if I could have my head coach, my field hockey coach in adulthood and in parenting, like, you go from having teachers and coaches and all these things to help you succeed to out in full life as a parent. And you're like, where is my person who's going to just hold me accountable and give me the calendar and give me the guidelines? Hard. You got to do it for yourself, and you got to be disciplined enough to do it. And it's hard.
I think that's like the designation. As you're saying all of that, I feel like that's because my whole life I've been searching for, like, when am I adult? When am I adult? When have I arrived? When have I finally gotten here? When is this thing actually, like, okay, fully took off and now I'm flying. I'm a full-fledged fucking adult, right?
Yes.
And I think that moment comes when everything you just got done saying, right? Where you are not just taking accountability of your actions, but of your life. Like, you're setting up structure, you're setting up discipline, you're matching your words, right? If I'm saying I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere. All of these little things that as kids, we don't know how to do. And we have so much help in doing. And we also have, like, our parents oftentimes protecting us and scapegoating for us so that we don't have to, you don't have to finish the violin in third grade. It's okay, honey, if you don't want to do the violin. All these other kind of things that we've had other people do for us. But as an adult, like, there ain't nobody else. And I can pretend like Stephanie is going to do all of these things for me, and I can expect her to do all of these things for me. I can even put a big chunk of them on her plate and be like, well, you didn't hold me accountable for whatever it is, right? Doing the dishes or the laundry, or God worse, even terrible things in our relationship, right? All of those things happen, I think. And okay, this is a spiral. Like, I'm getting lost here because you just sparked that for me. Because it's like, oh, well, if that's the case, and if that's the new barometer that I'm going to use, I'm an adult. Like, I'm an adult. I'm managing things. I'm doing things. I've got lists. I check them off.
Yeah.
I love that you normalized getting help. I love that you normalized, like, you're reaching out and saying, when you don't have that financial ability, that you were holding yourself to that level. But when you got it, you're a manager, you have a coach, you have somebody that you're working with. Earlier, you were like, I'm born with this. I have this in me. I don't know how to teach it. But the really teachable thing I think you do have to offer is I don't have to do it alone. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to ask for help, and I'm going to receive it. And I'm going to let that come in the space, as well as holding yourself up to those standards. I think that's a really strong attribute that just, like, moves the needle, that changes that and brings you into that successful person.
Yeah.
What's been your relationship with help? Is it something that you've struggled with when it comes to, like, receiving and seeking out help in any area?
I'm terrible at asking for help in general. But when it comes to mental, emotional help, I have no shame in that. It's more of the physical. It's asking help with physical things. Like, if somebody is in a store, it happened the other day. I was leaving Home Goods and I had a car, because I was like a one thing at a time. I keep complaining that I want a coffee spot for myself in the morning on the deck to listen to the birds. Like, right? Even if it's 5 minutes, I'm not making it seem like I'm sitting out there for an hour because my head can't handle that. But if I get 5 minutes of just me and the birds, it's great. But I was leaving Home Goods. My cart was, like, overflowing. And the two women were like, why don't you make 2 trips? I can get somebody to help. And I go, I got this. And I piled all this shit in, and I was like this, rug here, lamp here, like all this stuff. That's just me. I don't know. I'm not having somebody help me to the car. Are you crazy? But when it comes to me repeating myself, I am so glad that I have self-awareness. I repeat myself. And then eventually I'm like, I haven't done anything about the thing I keep hearing myself say. So that's the definition of insanity. It's just expecting if I say it one more time, it's going to happen. How many times have I let my kids eat on the couch? And then I'm like, your yogurt parfait this morning did not need to end up on my couch. So why do I keep talking about it and not sticking to it? So this morning I went over, I wrote it down. I said summer reminders, and maybe I'll do 3 rules on there because I can't handle more than 3. But one is you're gonna eat at a fucking table. Right? But we have to pick and choose those things, because if I was like that about everything, my kids would be like, get me out of this house.
Right.
Yeah.
Pick a few things that really matter to you. So I don't know if I just spiraled out of that, but
You sparked. You're sparking me.
But the help thing, mentally, emotionally, man, when I talk to some other creators, it is so healing for me. When I talk to my coach who does this, he works with really high level people, and he gets me to be unapologetically successful, a feeling of like, oh, I don't have to apologize for my success. I don't have to feel like people aren't going to like me if I'm successful, because that's a fear of mine. I had it all the way going back to, I was a crazy good athlete in high school. The newspapers used to come to my practices. I was so upset about that, but no one knew I was upset because I just game face, fake it till you make it, show up, do the interview. But I'd get in the car and I go, Dad, this is like so fucking embarrassing. Like, I don't want this to be about me right now. It's so uncomfortable. My teammates are going to hate me. So no one in my life even probably knows to this day that I had those conversations with my dad in his car, but it's always been a thing. I want everybody to be included. I want everybody to be seen and heard. And I think that's kind of where I'm taking my community on Instagram is, I don't want it or need it to be about me, because that would feel gross. I need to invite people in to feel like, oh God, I'm not alone. Even if it's like, oh yes, I love using a power washer. How weird is that? I'm a woman and like, I'd rather have him inside with the kids and I want to go power wash the cushions. Even to be like, that's relatable and I can relate to that feeling, like, then that's making me happy because it's creating community. So yeah, I want to kumbaya with people from an emotional, mental level, but not from a physical health level. Long answer.
I want to go back to creating a space to listen to birds. Like, I don't know what that is, as far as like, it feels like there's some part of either, whether it's a midlife crisis or it's just like really settling into, because we do the same thing. We moved to Tennessee like a year and a half ago, and we feel like we live in the fucking jungle because there is so many birds all day long. So we just leave the windows open and we just sit there all day listening to the cacophony of all of these bizarro, strange birds that exist. Anyways, that's a side note. But I want to circle back to intuition, because let's see if I can flesh this out all the way. As the person that trusts their intuition, as a person that goes, recognizes whatever that feeling is inside of them, I want to get your take on it. I want to hear your thoughts about it. But before we get there, I want to kind of break it down, because the other thing that Stephanie and I have had awareness of in the last 4 or 5 years of our life, right? I think COVID was a really big shift for a lot of people. And it's not just because of all the things that circulated around that time period, but what a massive reset, right? Everything's got to be put on hold for a second, and the world has to take a pause and look at the current state of their life. And so maybe this is part of it. But we got really good at going towards like those, what do we used to call them? Do you remember, babe? Help me out.
I'm trying. We got really good at going
the
towards.
Fuck yeah, right? What did we call
the fuck yes. Like, if it wasn't a fuck yes, that full body belly yes, then we weren't in.
Yeah, we got really good at recognizing those and just going towards those. So it became like, if it wasn't a fuck yes,
a full body, yeah,
then yeah, we're not doing it.
Yep.
And it's really hard at times, because it confronts, like, even just picking up and moving across the country for us was this really, really big, huge, challenging thing. But neither one of us could deny that, like, under the surface of it, there was that pull. There was that fuck yes feeling, even though we had to confront all of these really big what ifs, right? So break it down for us as best as you can. I know that it's a weird thing to kind of try to articulate and pick apart, but I want two specific questions. I guess I'll simplify it. Nicki, we'll just elaborate forever. We like to give like as many safe caveats as possible.
The way people think, no, this is good. This is the way people think. It's
So when it comes to intuition, I have two questions for you. I want your take on it. Like, what does it manifest as? How does it feel in your body? You know, all of those kind of things. What's your relationship with it? And then, do you think it is something like super esoteric, spiritual side of it, right? Do you think that it is something that originates from within you, or is it something that's external that you're connecting to?
You mean, is it like it's on a spiritual level? I've gone through my phases in this, my beliefs. So I was a kid who grew up Catholic, but not the parents who went to church every week. My two grandfathers went to church every week. My two grandmothers did not. So there was like a balance there, right? Everything in my life was like a balance for some reason. And then I worked for Alex and Ani, which was a jewelry company. It was the fastest growing jewelry company in the history of retail. So I joined as like the third employee for the founder. And the amount of stuff I learned on a spiritual level was crazy. She had a numerologist. We could not open a store. We could not sign a contract. We could not do anything without the numerologist approving it. So I had a numerologist. When I moved into my house, she sent her shaman to my house to bless the house. I still find crystals in like random plants. I'm like, where did this come from? So like I was on that level of like symbolism everywhere. There were crystals in my desk. There were panther symbols all over the office. Like when I had my first miscarriage, she put me on the phone with her best angel reader, whatever. There's all names they use from, right? Like psychic,
Yeah.
medium. I had those people at my fingertips. And when I tell you that when you are in with somebody like that, who is a crazy successful person, who has all her angel stuff aligned around her, it's hard to say that it isn't real or true. The stuff was all around me to the point where I feel like I now believe that I was part of that company, not because I was meant to be a boss bitch, but because I was meant to learn all the things that I learned while there on a spiritual level. So I've had miscarriages. I delivered a stillborn when my son was born. His twin is a stillborn. It changed my life. And I know that it's all for a higher power reason. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what it is, but I talk about it all the time. I talk to my grandmothers all the time. My son asks me a ton of questions about death, grandparents, his twin sister. We talk openly about it. We look at pictures of her and we talk about it. And I let him feel emotional about it and wonder about it. Because I say, isn't it amazing that we don't know all this stuff? We have no idea. But like, can you feel it when you look at her? And he's like, yeah. I mean, he's 7. He's not going to school telling his teachers about this, but this is the bond that we have. And it's important to our lifestyle. So it's absolutely there. I think it's powered me forward to believe in something other than my own self. There's like so much power in the universe and in energy and connection to others. You know, it's like sometimes if you just, stop me if I'm rambling, but there's another creator who I've become friendly with, and he is a bold, comedic presence. He swears, he's hard, he's on the outside, totally like, right? He and I send each other voice notes about, hey, are you stuck here? Hey, how do you deal with these comments? And like when we talk, it's just this vulnerable bond where we're both feeling a lot of the same stuff from being online. And so no matter how somebody is showing up forward facing, there's something beneath the surface that we're all like feeling together, right? If we haven't built up too much scar tissue around it, we're all these emotional beings wondering what the hell to do next. So again, a long-winded way of saying I believe in so many other things. So many other things. I don't know how to even, both of my kids names were chosen with numerology in mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I don't talk about that. No one would ever know that from my silly ass videos, right? They might see I have a few crystals and I can't tell you what my crystals mean. I just know they make my room feel good and And I know plants make me feel good. So there's a lot of stuff makes you feel good. You just don't always have to know how to define it. So to draw you into the coffee nook in the morning, I was like, why am I sitting on my couch drinking my coffee, scrolling my phone and wasting this precious half hour that I have to myself? Why wouldn't I get excited about making my coffee and finding a spot that feels really good for me? So that's as simple as me following my gut. Like my gut wants this little sacred place for myself to have my coffee in the morning. And that starts your day off way better than scrolling TikTok.
What is the feeling that you get? Like, do your best. And again, I know that it's like difficult, but the physical sensation in your body when you get one of those pulls to go towards something as opposed to not, right? Because there's also a sensation that comes when you're encountering something that is in opposition to what you should be doing, right? There's always going to be that bounce and stuff that your intuition says, yeah, do that, don't do that. And then there's the dance between those two things that we have to try to mitigate and dance between. But what does it feel like? Is there a physical sensation for you? And I know that this is kind of like silly in a sense, but
thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us, listening to the podcast. We know there's a lot of options out there and you're choosing your time with us, and we're so grateful that you are. Would you do us a favor? Would you subscribe to this podcast, share it, and write us a review? This helps us build the podcast. This helps us reach more and more people. And we have a goal of reaching over 1 million people. So any amount of engagement that you do really helps us achieve that. Thank you for being here. We're so grateful to you. We're so excited that you're choosing to share your journey with us and listen to a part of ours. Let's get back to the show.
No, it's not silly. I could go on a few things. Like one is like, think about how many people stay in friendships because they feel like they have to, and it's loyalty, and we're taught to be loyal and keep your friend. You can still keep your friends, but you don't have to, like, it's okay to also like spend more time alone. So the feeling that I had growing up was, I think I distracted myself a lot from these deep feelings by always having somebody to talk to, always having something to do. I was like a socialite in my 20s and early 30s. And now I'm like, ew, how did I live like that? I'm exhausted. I got invited to go have a paid experience at a Celtics playoff game. A freaking tiny, I sound like the people that I make fun of. A tiny little yellow freaking canary just fluttered right in front of my window right now. We have to look up what that means.
It's totally something. We do that all the time. So let's do it right now. We'll help you with it.
I make fun of this, but it was, so anyway.
Hold on. It's a yellow canary.
A little yellow. It looked like somebody's parakeet.
Okay. What does it bring up inside of you? What's the first thing that sparks when you think about yellow canaries?
It just flew by again. Was that thing doesn't look like it belongs outside. It looks like it belongs in somebody's fucking bird cage in the house.
Okay. So that thing doesn't look like it belongs where it's at.
Imposter syndrome.
Right? So the universe mirroring something for you.
What was I talking about when that little thing came?
You were talking about going to the Celtics game.
Okay. So I got invited to go.
Did you confront imposter syndrome when it came to that?
No, I was like, honestly, I thought in my head, you're supposed to be really excited about this stuff. This is amazing. And then I thought, no, you've already done this shit in your corporate life and in your 20s and 30s. And it's okay to say no and let someone else who hasn't done this yet go have that experience. And it felt so good. I just said to my manager, I go, old me would have said, hell's yes, I'm on my way. Get me my Celtics hat. And new me is like, I don't even have to technically watch the game. I could look at highlights later if that's not what I want to do. It's just so different. So when you say that I've started with friendships, I used to feel like I had to be in the mix, the FOMO. And now my intuition is telling me to just pull back and relax and be present and feel all the shit. And to know that it doesn't have to be perfect, but like, to me, success, you said at the beginning of this episode, you said you're trying to figure out what your next, right? Wasn't there a framework of like, when you know you've like made it as an adult?
Yeah.
When I know I've made it as an adult is when I can like really just totally sit back, sit more, be still more, And so I think that that's what is starting to happen. And maybe it's midlife where I'm like, shit, man, I'm tired. I'm hormonal. I just want to sit with the birds. It's also a pullback. We didn't grow up with technology. I think we innately, like, we can intuitively feel when it's become too much for our brains. Our kids don't feel that. We feel like, if I feel like, holy shit, I need to break away from this thing. Can you imagine that our kids have that?
I wonder if they don't have that feeling.
Right.
Because I think about that all the time. Nicki, you're giving us so much amazing things to sit here and think about. I love it.
I had a feeling at the beginning of the podcast that was very visceral. Like my gut got all, I was all like, oh God, what am I feeling right now? And it's when you were first talking and introducing, and I was like, I couldn't identify it. I didn't need to. But now I'm realizing, because it just came up, was like, oh, we're going to talk real shit today. We're going to talk about deep shit. Usually on a podcast, it's surface level Q&A. How'd you get on TikTok? How'd you do this? How was your career? We're going like deep, vulnerable stuff, which is what I think about every day. But
it's all we think about. It's literally our life. It's like sometimes I feel like we do too much of it. We have to remind ourselves sometimes to keep it much simpler, because between the two of us, we will sit and get lost in conversation of deep, not just like healing stuff, but even just like, I mean, we're out in the fucking cosmos sometimes 4 hours later trying to understand, are we even really existing in this moment, space and time?
It's hard to not question that right now, isn't it? Wait,
it's so weird.
I'm going to put this on YouTube for a second, and maybe you can't go there, but first marriages versus second marriages in terms of mental depth.
Okay.
Baby, do you want to go first?
Sure.
But are you two, I just need to know this first and then go into it. Are you two the couple who wants to like sit and have a pot of coffee together and talk about shit?
Nicki, we're the couple that wants to like never do anything other than sit and have a pot of coffee together and talk about shit.
That's my next life.
It's our whole fucking life is sitting around talking about our emotions and our life together. How did this make you feel? I don't know. How did this make you feel? Like it's nonstop to the point where it's like, baby, I need a fucking break. I got to go do something else besides talk about our emotions together.
And then the break is you go out into the woods. You go out into the woods and like barefoot running through the woods, connecting with nature is your break.
So first marriage is the mental, look, what's the question again? The mental capacity, I
guess that was the thing because I know what it's like. I'm never going to talk about what I didn't have with my ex because it's just not what I want to do. But I know what this phase of my life would want in a partner. And it's so much different. And I think that answers one of the last things we questioned is like your intuition can change, like your thoughts can change. And I think we're put in this world where it's like you marry somebody and you have to work it out to the end. And honestly, that would have really, I think my ex and I would agree on this. We just were not compatible. Like that's as simple as it gets. Is we once were compatible based on our lifestyles. And then based on our lifestyles, again, in a different phase of having kids, total lifestyle change, we weren't. And like, why can't we simplify it? We make it so hard and we make it so stressful and we make it so sad, like a sad story, instead of looking at like, there's different chapters and there's different people that are part of those chapters. And it can be a much more beautiful thing than what we make it to be.
Yes. Well, you touched on that earlier. You talked about your beliefs and how you're like, you're questioning whether or not you even believe it. Like, is this something that I believe, or was this something that was taught to me, that was societal, that was brought? And I think that goes with so much of like that relationship dynamic and what we have these values a lot of times, or at least for me, I had these values that I thought I was supposed to have, these beliefs that I was supposed to have, this role that I was supposed to play. And that's what I brought into it. The partner that I was, all of these things. And then when that started shifting, you're breaking out of that. And mine was a little different of a breaking out of that environment. But so much of it has been a unprogramming of beliefs that I thought were beliefs, which were actually programming. So for me, that take on it, where you're expressing that, is really unwinding these different chapters, but unwinding beliefs that served you at a time, but doesn't really serve you anymore. And it doesn't, like, you don't have to believe the same thing that you believed when you were younger or even last week, because it's changing and you're changing, and you get to let go and let yourself change, let yourself grow, and just be who you are in a more authentic way. Like that canary or that yellow bird that was coming through, you're like, it seems like it should be in somebody's cage, but it's not. It was like this liberation, this breaking out, and not putting yourself, whether it's in a cage of a public society, I'm really out there, I'm keeping myself distracted, and now my liberation looks like a sanctuary, looks like sitting for 5 minutes with my coffee in the morning.
Right
Or
over my coffee spot.
is it? Oh my goodness.
It's right there. It's literally right there. Okay, I'll turn it around.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but that's the spot. That's the spot that I'm putting on.
That's perfect.
And it's funny because if it were a cardinal, I would like channel my mom. My mom's the person that's like, I saw a cardinal. It's grandpa. I saw a cardinal when I like, and so I start thinking every time we see a cardinal, which is like a lot of times in your life, is it mean it's something? Like, right? You start going into that. But that freaking bird just now threw me for a loop. That thing I've never seen out in the wild. So yes, uncaged.
I think the whole marriage, like first marriages, I mean, we could we could definitely do like an entire podcast series on them. But I think it's what you were saying earlier. It's what you both were saying, is it's like, that's a version of who I was. It's almost like a snapshot. And I mean, it just kind of worked out this way where we both did this, like our first marriages were very much over the course of our 20s. We got married very early in our life. It kind of went through the years of, our 20s. And then we met at the beginning of our 30s. But I'm a completely different person. And we talk about that all the time too, where like we keep referring back to like 4 or 5 years ago where everything we're completely different people than when we got married. We've been together for like over a decade. And the Steph and Craig that met are sure as shit not the Steph and Craig that sit here today. Completely different people. And what we learned and what it required us to do was to continually be interested in meeting the new version of the person that we were with, rather than getting frustrated when something new would happen. So it's like, who is this new person that's coming forth? Who is this part of Stephanie that is kind of stretching and, becoming a part of her reality? I get to meet that at the same time that she gets to meet it. And a lot of it too, Nicki, for us is this healing part of it. I just moved my chair. I'm so excited. It's this healing part of getting to meet. It's not even new versions of us. It's getting to meet the real us. Yeah. It's getting to meet the little tiny inner child part of us who has always felt this way and who has always thought this way, just never felt safe enough to express it and communicate it. Right. So a lot of that's what it's like been for us now.
Yes. And I could go back and listen, we could all, like, I think the whole thing is like, people love to bash their exes, right? I could go back and say, listen, I totally faked the first part of our dating life because I acted like the coolest, chill, go with the flow. Yeah, that's fun and funny because I thought that that's what landed the guy, right? Like to be cool and to be cool around his friends. And now I'm like, oh no, I really am a much more like I'm just a person that, thinking back to if we were just dating today, I would have not continued on with the relationship because I have different set of rules and standards for like the way I want things to be. And I'm much bitchier about the things that I want versus what I don't. Right. But like back then, that was like you did what society along the way taught you to do. Was
I had a question though, and you can answer this. You don't have to, right? If you don't want to. We're so enmeshed into this process of healing together in our relationship. And that's kind of the lens that we look at everything through, is healing in relationship. It's not just your primary relationship, but it's all relationships give you some insight into your own shadow, into your own past, into your own stuff, if you're willing to look at it, right? But my question is, how much like everything that you're talking about now with knowing who you are, being able to like live your life the way that you want to live, raise your kids, run a house, you are setting up this life in such a way where it's yours, and that's awesome, and the autonomy of it and being able to do that. Is there any part of you that is, I'm sure there is, of course, but like what part of you is nervous about what that looks like moving forward if you want to date, if you want to start creating a life with somebody else? Like, what does that look like? Is it just like, oh, I can't even go there right now, I'm too focused on other things? Or
That's a great question. I think about it all the time. I think where I'm at right now is different than where I was at a year ago. A year ago, I was trying to make sure that the focus was my home because I was finalizing the divorce, and there were a lot of things happening, right? With like kids every other weekend. What's the schedule like? How do we get this finalized in the court? It was just totally different ballgame. And now that that's finalized, my next phase is how do I get, and this is what I'm working through right now, like the very tip of it is starting, is how do I get to my kids to see me as a whole person versus just as their mom. So they're 7 and 9. So I feel like, again, my gut tells me now is the time for them to become more contributing to the household, to become more aware that even if mom is not here when the bus comes at the end of the day, that's okay. Because the phase before this, I was all about mama bear, protection, security, consistency, like setting the foundation for that. And now I feel like my gut tells me, okay, it's a new, right? Like the spring almost feels like the new year for me, where this is what springs my new ideas to go into play. All right, what do we need next? They know I'm here. They know I'm 1,000% theirs. Now what? And it's teaching them a little more independence and a little more autonomy while also giving that to mom, because they have separation anxiety at this age. And I don't know that they should, but I did the best with what I had in front of me each year along the way.
does dating fit into that for you when you think about what's next for mom and how do I create this separation so that they see me not just as the mom, right? But as a girl. I'm a girl, right? I'm a person, I'm a human.
Yes. So I just had this conversation with one of my girlfriends recently, is I took my kids to Disney 2 years ago, took them last year, and I took them this year. And I'll tell you, just based on the Disney trip, you know, when you have like an annual thing and you can kind of compare the years prior, this is my comparison. Is year one, I was like, I can do this. A solo mom with 2 kids, 2 little kids at Disney, I can do this. It was almost proof to myself that I could keep living the life that I dreamed of, even if I wasn't in like the nuclear family. So that was me healing through divorce, healing through the pain of like, this isn't going to be what I always thought it would be. Next year was like, oh my God, this is so fun. This is so fun. We're going to be at Disney. Like my kids love Disney. Let's do this every year until they're like over it, right? Because it just creates the memories. And then this year, I was like, I deserve to have somebody here doing this with me and my kids and maybe his kids. So this was the year that I thought, like, I'm not meant to do this. I don't want to do this alone. I don't want to be this empowered woman. I already am that now. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's brewing in my thought of like, it was the first time I looked around and thought, it's not because I need somebody. It's because I want to share this with somebody. We're watching the fireworks and my kids were like, had met little friends and they were chatting and the fireworks were going. I was literally drinking my margarita outside of like in Epcot, my frozen avocado, perfect margarita. And I got chips and guac and queso and a little to-go thing so that we could have it during the fireworks. And I thought this moment could not be any more perfect unless I had my freaking person who was as excited about the avocado margarita and the chips and the queso and the guac. Like, it's as simple as that for me. Like, who's going to enjoy those little kid? Like, I'm like a big kid. Who's going to enjoy those moments with me? So yeah, it's beginning to creep into my mind more. And I don't know the answer of how, but it will. The universe will bring it because I'm thinking about it. We'll bring it when it's all meant to be brought.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I think you're spot on. I think that's exactly what'll happen, right? And it sounds like you'll probably knock it out of the park like everything else that you put your mind to, because it's something that you want to do.
Yeah, and you know what? It's either gonna be a fit or it's not, and that's a beautiful. I think that's what they say about your 40s, right? Is like you just make better decisions. Doesn't mean because your clock's ticking. It just means you've got enough wisdom to know if somebody fits into my life exactly as it is with my kids and doesn't require me to constantly break away from my kids to meet their needs. It's my kids need to fit entirely organically, authentically, like into the scenario. Otherwise, no freaking way would I risk that. Your kids, when they're young, that changes their entire impression of you. I've worked way too hard for them to change their impression of me at this point. Every time mom's not with us, she's with so and so. Why don't we like? Or every time she's with us, she's also with this guy. Like, that's not what I want either.
I'm going to give you some advice. It's completely unsolicited, so you can take it and use it for whatever it's worth, right? And it really is just advice that I've been giving myself, because we recently had, like we said earlier, our son graduated high school. He turned 18. All of this took place within the span of like the same week. And we also flew all of our daughters out to Tennessee. So we had this really wonderful, like week-long hangout vacation, chill time with all of them. It was really, really cool. And we were like a nervous wreck throughout all of it. We had so much emotional, I mean, you name it, we were feeling it. It was just a really hard experience as well. But I have to keep reminding myself, and it's the same thing that I remind myself over and over and over and over and over again now when I think about my kids and when I interact with my kids. I have to remind myself all the time that they're so fully, completely autonomous from me, that they're living a life completely separate from my life. They're living their life.
Yeah.
And I have a perception of their life, but that is through my lens and through my filters. So my perception of their lived experience of their life is really just more about my life. It's really just about my relationship with them, my view of how they see me as a parent. So much of my life is spent trying to make sure that I think my kids see me in a certain way. I never want my kids to see me in this other light that I'm constantly trying to avoid and run from. And I have to just constantly, it's the thing you were mentioning earlier with Post-it notes, right? It's almost in the forefront of my mind now, where it's like they're living their life. It's their fucking life. I'm just a supporting role in their life. I'm just playing dad in their life. And I need to stop thinking that I not only have any control over that, but that however I am viewed in their life is okay. Like, it's their life. It's just simply their life. Yeah. And I need to do everything that I can to live my life for, not just for me, because it's always this dance between like, how do I show up as a parent, but then at the same time, I can't be the parent that's like so super focused on their kid's life that their kids are like, geez, get a life already, dad, right?
Right.
Because I want them to be autonomous. I want them to live their life. I want them to do their thing.
Yep.
So it's just this weird dance, but.
So true.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I started thinking that too, is like, oh gosh, all my friends say it goes by so fast. All of a sudden they're going to be out the door and I'm going to be like, okay, well then, hello, what do I do now? And I don't want that to happen either. But you're right. It's like you worry so much about what they're going to think and how they're experiencing it, that like, if you're not living your best life for yourself, you're not showing up the same way as a parent too.
Right. You're not giving them the example of what is possible, rather than having their example of mother be a mom that is there all the time, a mom that is, that's a really beautiful gift to not only have them get to experience from the lived experience of it, and for them to also get to perceive, and now their program of mom is based off of what you've done as a mom. But you also want them, I'm assuming, this is what I think about, is I also want them to have this other definition of what a parent is. And it's a parent that has, ups and downs, ins and outs, full social life, like a parent who has this existence in life completely separate from being a parent.
That lives a full life.
Yes.
That lives that full, complete life.
Yes.
we're one of my best friends is a behavioral like specialist. She's done this forever with like kids, and she and I have just started this conversation of my kids are so reliant on me. Like it's now becoming probably a bit of what they call like a codependency. So like, all right, now what? Because you can't tell somebody who's in like a codependent relationship, you can't tell them, oh, pull back entirely. So now you got to start with baby steps. And she gave me great advice. And it happened this weekend. My ex was taking the kids one day, the kids, I've got the pool in the back. I've got, like this is their comfort zone. And they that morning were like, he's like, I don't know what they want to do. He offered to take them to a Red Sox game. One wanted to go, one didn't. The other one wanted to get her girlfriend to go for the day with them. And everything in me, past me, before having these deep conversations about shit, we got to go into the next chapter, would have been like, oh, I'll just keep them here and they could swim for a bit and then we'll figure it out. And I listened to my friend and I said, you're taking them, you figure it out. And you know how hard that is for me, who's like, well, and I had to explain to my kids, Dad's got you. Dad is making the plan. And this isn't to take anything away from him. It's just I enable everybody, including him. So now I'm like, everybody's capable. You've got this. And guess what came out of it? My son, he took the kids to his golf course to swim in the pool, to go out on the golf cart, to swing some balls. My son now is 7, cannot stop talking about golfing. He had to bring him again yesterday. This is a kid that doesn't want to leave me ever. He went again yesterday, and now he's already talking about next. So again, it's like, look at the benefit that I just gave my kids. I didn't coddle everybody and say, just stay here where you're comfortable. It was like, no, you're going. And it turned out to be a great freaking day.
You said they're 9 and 7?
Yeah.
That's really a gift that you're given that early. Like, did not figure that out when our kids were in that age range of 9 and 7. Like, that's...
Well, I'm feeling it all, and I'm giving myself the space to feel it. It's like,
yeah.
And if I keep
it's hard
things over and over, I've tried it all. It's trial. A lot of this stuff is trial and error too. I tried to spend every other weekend away from them when they were smaller, and it was really great for me. It was really hard on them at that age, and I just was always torn. I was like, I can't tell you how many trips I made back in the middle of like having a fun weekend in Cape Cod to rush back home to be their savior. And I think it was important then, but now, older ages, like I think they got to figure some of this out now.
So I love these conversations because there's so much of it that you don't know what you don't know. And when we have all these program beliefs, this is how you're supposed to show up. This is what mother looks like. This is what wife looks. So father, this is what husband, all of these things that come up in space of this is what this looks like. It's not until somebody starts this conversation that, I mean, maybe you get inspired, maybe it comes through and you're like, I'm going to try it different. But for me, there were so many things that I didn't recognize. I didn't know until somebody shared it. Somebody's like, I'm doing it this way. This is, my kids are thriving in this. And it's almost like this, oh, I get to break this mold. I get to like create this experience for them now and for myself. And I love these conversations. They just spark so much other possibility of what can be done. And there's so many healthy ways to parent. There's endless healthy ways to parent.
Absolutely. Look at the divorce system. Your divorce attorneys sit with you and go, well, what do you want the kid's schedule to be? And I'm like, why isn't there a child psychologist as part of this conversation? You're asking me, I want them 100%. That's why I had kids. And then there's this formula on paper for like what the financials look like. You end up going through this process feeling like your kids are a formula. And I'm like, no, they're these two ages. So why aren't we talking to a specialist who understands what these two ages are going through attachment wise? And like, there's still so much we need to figure out as far as like raising kids in the environment today. It's just different. Everything's different today.
So different.
Yeah.
Nicki, this has just been amazing.
Yes.
We have loved every second of getting to hang out with you and chat with you. Thank you so much.
I could have talked to you guys all day. This was fun. I appreciate you having me.
Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, that was it. Just honestly, I love having the conversations, and being curious is so fun.
So we have a tagline that we close every episode with. And when we have guests, we like them to use it. So you can close out the episode with, do you want to give her the tag, babe?
Expect the best, plan for the greatest.
I love that. Okay, closing out with expect the best, plan for the greatest.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicki.
Got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me. We were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights, things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.